it might be like that, but NLP is very effective. It really works in certain contexts, and you know, that is not something that people can deny. People see the results, and one of the results is your social panorama, one of the innovative models that you developed. You train this model all over the world. You have written books in many languages on this. Can you tell us a little bit what it is? What is the social panorama?
Yeah. Well, you want a little background to it also? I think
it's a big question, I know,
yeah,
but just tell me what the first thing that comes up.
From the beginning on, as a social psychologist, I was interested in how can I use the same technology of NLP to do something more social, where it's dealing with relationships and groups and teams, etc. We had some things that we could do that was in fact based on the parts work and that enlarged to teams and groups. So that's the briefest description of that. But I had the idea that's not enough, but I didn't know how to proceed with that. And then I found out that what I did was when I presented submodalities, I started to use one example to make it all clear to my participants. And I asked them, okay, think of somebody that makes you shy. And they did that. Most people could find somebody. And now the next thing what you do is bring that person, the image of the person, downwards and further away. And then I had a whole group of students and they all went, ah. So you saw that with these two suggestions, they immediately could shift their state in a relationship. Yeah. So, well, I didn't generalize that at that moment. I thought, well, it's just a nice example of submodalities. And then I was writing with Jaap,
Jaap Hollander.
Yeah, met Jaap Hollander, Essences of NLP, Essence of NLP. And then I was writing on categories and hierarchies. And then it struck me, yes, in fact, because then I was proclaiming, and I still believe that it's a very nice approach, that hierarchies and categories are a result also of submodalities in a way, must be. And then I thought, oh, but then social categories and social hierarchies must be also the product of submodalities. And then maybe space is important. And so I came to the idea that for a social world, the spatial representation of people, so the spatial imagery was crucial. Now, it didn't take that much time to see that space in general was the basic submodality or the basic organizing principle outside of language. And so at that time we had language is how we structure our thoughts, and then now submodalities or so help. It turned around, and now it still is for me that way, that the primary way how people organize their thoughts and ideas and everything, memories, is in space. And language comes after that. So when we use language, we describe what we see there and there and there and there, and what we have structured over there and there. So, but the social domain, and so how we do that, the same thing with people, was something that was very reliable. And so I decided, okay, here is an area that at least it could be a parallel development to NLP as the timeline, because the timeline looks at how we create a concept of time in space. And so here was, okay, here we create a concept of the social world in space. And so, and it was panoramic, so that's why I started to call it the social panorama, in contrast to the timeline, which was more linear. And then when I started to apply that on my clients and in trainings, I found it immediately totally strikingly effective. And so that certain issues with relationships that, well, when you talk about a jealousy or let's say authority issues or hate, things that could be very difficult when you just were talking to the person and maybe work with the part that make them hate and what's the positive intention, etc. That could work very well, but when I just ask them, okay, where is the person that you hate? Point at the location, what's the eye level, what's the direction of the gaze, and now move them to another place, then it was solved immediately. Yeah. And so I came to the conclusion that the other procedures brought about the same movement in space, but then in more complex ways, more indirect ways. That was a parallel to what we already were thinking when we started off doing submodalities. Submodalities, Bentler started somewhere in, I think, '84 with submodalities. And then we already had the meta model, and so we knew that, okay, we can do a meta model intervention, and that can change the submodalities of something. And that is what makes it a changed reality to the client. Not the changed words, no. We worked over the words, but then something shifts in the submodalities.
It's the experience, the subjective experience.
Yeah, in the submodalities of the experience. And in the same way, I thought, okay, we can talk and do many things with relationships, but when it changes, it's the location, mainly the location, that shifts to make a relationship change. Now, and by just trying that out endlessly, and then it extended to groups and also spirits and gods and everything that was social in a way, this model came about. And and I think that that it really is what I hoped it would be, a tool to do social psychological interventions. And the greatest disadvantage of this tool is that it works so quick.
So you get the change and then the client can go home.
Right. So I have a practice where I only see my clients once. When they return, it's most often another problem that they come from.
And if people would use this model, what are the major benefits of the social panorama? Yeah,
well, in fact, already be said, it gives you enormous insight in, let's say, the conceptual mechanics of social life. So how do people create a certain social situation? For instance, when a person acts Asperger-like, so autistic, how is this subjectively created? So how is it possible that you don't notice so much of the other person? Well, one of the things that I found out is that people who have this type of traits, they don't represent the others so much as others. So they have not so much information, but they don't have these others so clear in their mental space. And when they have them somewhere, they're probably more at distance. And so when you would have them closer, they will have more impact on you, because nearer is more influential in general in mental space. And so you will be forced to think what they think. But when you have them at more distance, and you are not so well informed because you have maybe little interest in other people, then there are in a way more empty concepts. So you can think of somebody, you can think of Bo, but when you are artistic, you don't know much about Bo because it's just
he's
an
just
image,
there somewhere,
something. But when you are, let's say, very empathic, you're very interested in the background of Bo and how he smiles and what he does, and so you start to build extensive imagery about him. And for instance, the social panorama helps you to understand any type of social thing, issue. So I didn't find any that were not to be able, or I was not able to understand on the basis of that.
Okay. And well, you talk a lot about images and pictures forming around you in a panorama. Does it also work with sounds or maybe kinesthetics?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's often, let's say, the visual system is of course the most flexible system we have. So we can switch an image in a second.
Fast,
when this image has some emotional meaning to us, the shifting will cause an emotional shift. Most clients, of course, and most people who has some issue, they have feelings. So my work always starts off with the feelings, but like many other NLP techniques, the changes are often made in the visual. Of course, you can ask a person, okay, you feel this hatred here, now shift it downwards and maybe you have another feeling as hatred. So that might work, but the image is more flexible. Now, also the auditory, so the voices of people, when it comes to the social, the auditory can be very important. Voices can come from everywhere, and but the visual part, I think, it's the most reliable part that people have often most control over. So they can control this image more than they can control their feelings. So that's why that's the primary mode of operation.
All right. And you know, you wrote quite a lot of books in your career, many on social panorama, also other books. Which book are you most proud of if you're looking back? Of course, you still have a lot of things you want to do, but looking back, which one is for you like standing out?
Well, the book about the social panorama in its let's say the German and the English and the Dutch version, I'm most proud that I could bring them out so that they were published, because I must say that one of the things that was difficult in my career was that let's say when I'm arrogant I say, well, the stuff that I did was too far out, and so it was very difficult to get people to recognize the value. And NLP itself was already far out. It was already, and then something like this was even harder. So I remember that a very good friend, I still see her once in a while, NLPer. She did an exercise with me when we were both in the workshop of Robert McDonald's, and she did the visual switch with my issue that I couldn't get this book out. So it was really pretty hard to get it to a publisher. And then I made a shift, and so then I decided it will be printed, it will be published at any price. And this helped me. And so then I could see the image of the book being published, but I really needed that because it was, in the beginning, it was also very expensive to get it translated. I had written it in English, and then the first publisher that was interested was a German publisher. And so it needed to be translated to German. We had two publishers, but well, the one wanted me to pay the translation. I couldn't control that, so I didn't want to do it. Then the other wanted to pay the translation, but then I would only have royalties after 5,000 copies. Then, well, I had these types of problems that occurred on the way of getting it published, and I'm most proud of having done that. So the writing itself, I think, was peanuts compared to
getting it out there.
To get it published.